On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina.
All right, everybody. I'm here with Jon Nazarko of the Texas Rangers organization. Zark, thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate your time. Tell the listeners about yourself, if you would, please.
Hey, thanks for having me, Chris. So now newly the AA strength coach with Texas. Came from Rhode Island, Connecticut area. Went to school in Rhode Island. Played a couple sports out there, and actually fell in love with the weight room. And it's been a fun journey. It's been a fun road from graduating college to getting an internship with Mike Boyle up in Boston to an intern at Rhode Island, a paid internship where I walked in and saw my old strength coach, and he said, "Hey, are you certified?" I said, "Yep." He goes, "You want a job?" I said, "You got an offer or what?" So that started that job, and then from there went to work with you guys and the Red Sox for a season. Went back to Rhode Island to finish my master's and was a full-time employee there for a few years, and took a chance on leaving Rhodey and found myself here in Texas, and it's been a whirlwind of young career, and it's been a lot of fun so far. So glad to be here.
You've been back and forth, man, and I'm sure it was hard to leave home. I took a job after the Pirates, being back home, and then I left to go to the Red Sox, and it was like kind of like being around, but I kind of need to expand myself a little bit. And so one of the things that I want to talk about is just the transition from college to pro to college, and just kind of the differences that you've seen within the two settings, maybe some of the similarities, just how the training works comparatively. And I think that's kind of just the big, broad topic that we'll cover, and then we'll just, whatever happens here. So kind of go into that a little bit for me.
Absolutely. So coming out of college, especially so young in the career, it was like you come in as the new kid on the block. You want to make an impact early, and you want to have the perfect program. And we all know there's no such perfect program. Otherwise we wouldn't have jobs. You know what I mean? It's like, so coming in there young and ready to go, you have your own teams. You learn from watching your other strength coaches do what they do with their teams, and you kind of adapt, and you grow from there. And then as you transition into college, professional, it's very different in terms of there's a program in place. There's only one team here. And you are doing only, well, for the most part, in-season training and coaching. And in college, you get all your phases. You get the kids in the fall, you get them in the winter, you get them during their season, and then you send them home for 2-3 months with their at-home program, and then you start all over again. In professional, it's you come in, you got spring training, or at least when I first started, right? You got spring training, and you go right into your season. In which case, once the season's ends, you got a month or two of instructs, if that's happening with your organization. Who comes there? Only a select amount of people, and then the players are gone for the most part, and it becomes really difficult as a coach to accept that and not have the ability to do an off-season program, have a hands-on off-season program. You know what I mean? So the biggest difference is learning to accept that it's in-season training, and in-season training can be so much. It's as much as you make it, instead of coming in and being like, I just have to do this and I just follow this, and you can make it very bland, or you can make it very fun. And I think that is the biggest difference between college and pro. It's what you make of the time you have. When in college, it's you have your structure of, I know this is my off season, I know this is here, I know this is there, and you can program very comfortably there. But in season, which is what you work with in pro ball, is like, all right, well, how are you going to attack what you did in college in that window of a season? And I mean, I could go on forever on that topic. I think I actually, want to bring up a point here is the word maintenance comes up a lot with in-season training, right? Especially college, and I've heard it in professional too, is like we're trying to maintain throughout the year. And that term, in my opinion, gives you just maintaining this. It almost downgrades what you're doing. And if that's the message you're giving, you're handcuffing yourself. So by eliminating that term, like you're training, you have phases in season, you're training something at some time, at some point. And that's where you can have your fun and your freedom and really explore yourself as a coach,
You got a ton of good things that I want to get into all of these individually, but because we're on maintenance first, like let's go into this. So I've seen guys, I've been with guys who have actually PR'd in the weight room, and usually it's like a reliever who obviously is not an everyday player or like a bench guy. But the idea of maintenance is kind of confusing to me in the sense that like you said, you can always get better. If a lot of the times, like it's cliche that it gets said, but it's not how you start, it's how you finish, right? And a lot of times people will remember how you end the season, right? And if you start the season a certain way and then you just don't ever get better the whole way, like I don't understand how you have 7 months, 6, 7, 8 months, whatever it is, depending on spring training, the season instructs, like of training potential, right? Training window. And like you said, we are in season with guys and we don't get them in the off season, and it does suck and it's hard. But at the same time, we have a long window of time where we spend 10 to 12 hours with guys every single day. And it might not be that we're trying to build strength, and certain guys we are, right? Younger kids, maybe they're trying to build strength, but even at the highest level in the major leagues, like guys are still trying to get better during the season. They're not like, you know what, my swing feels great, I'm just going to kind of ride this out, right? Like, no, guys are always trying to tinker to make their swing better. Pitchers are always throwing off the mound and working on their mechanics and working on their spin and their release point because they're trying to get better, right? Like,
absolutely.
The word maintenance is so confusing because it's like, I'm good enough, I'm just gonna ride that out. Like, no, nobody should have that mindset, because like you said, it's handcuffing you to think that what you're doing is good enough, right? And we can always do more, and sometimes it's like doing less is doing more, right? Like getting more sleep and training less might help you be better, but like there's always something you can do to get better. And I think the maintenance thing, like you said, the biggest thing is it shifts your mindset for me, is right. Like, oh, I'm just going to maintain my speed. Like, no, like try to get faster. I'm just going to maintain my mechanics. Like, no, try to throw harder. Like there's always ways that you can get better. And I think the people that say we're just maintaining are usually only focusing on strength. And like, there's a ton of other qualities that you can get better while your strength level maintains itself, quote unquote.
Absolutely.
So I love what you're saying there. And I agree 100%. And it's something we could probably talk on for a long time. And it's just like, it's fresh in my mind, because I had this conversation with somebody the other day about like, okay, listen, I know you're trying to get stronger, but there are other things that are going to help you. And especially like in baseball, there are guys that'll never come in the weight room and they'll hit 30 plus homers, right? But that doesn't mean they're maintaining. Like they're trying to get better in the cage. Like they're just not weight room guys, right? So like, it is what it is, and I think you'll see that in pro ball. The second thing I want to talk about is because it's only in season, you talk about like it can either be mundane or it can be fun, right? And like, what are you doing to kind of keep guys engaged in training during the season? Because in reality, it is a long season, and there are days where guys don't want to do things, and there are days where guys don't want to get better. There's some just check the box days. Like, how are you keeping guys engaged during the season?
So what I did a lot this year was just constant communication with our players. One of my biggest things is if you don't have a relationship with your player, how do you expect him to do something that you're asking him to do, especially full-heartedly? A little bit of touching back on the college to pro thing is college kids, you're coming in, you can be as strict as you want, as hard as you want, as friendly as you want. They're going to do what you ask them to do. In pro ball, it's a little different. It's you need to have that relationship to get them engaged, involved. And I would say that was my biggest advantage this year, to keeping it not, stale or consistent, like on that regards of going back and forth with my players. They come in, they talk to me. It's like, hey, this is what I got today. And I look at the lift and we'll adjust if we need. It's not being so stuck in with a pattern. Obviously, going through my phases as the year went on and trying to keep it as light and as fun as possible, as interesting as possible. That's might be the best way to put it, right? Because swinging is interesting, throwing is interesting, but weight room, it's like, oh, well, we just pick things up and put things out. No, there's so many other ways you can do it, and trying to bridge the gap of when they come in, they're down that day, but they know they need to get something in. All right, we'll hit our first block. May or may not jump into a little bit of the second block, maybe cut a set here, and then that third block, which tends to be more accessory stuff by nature, turn that into a sport specific movement, whether it's with the yellow strap, the what's that strap, or maybe another med ball toss, something that's going to keep them a little more engaged to finish the day, if that's where we're going. Or if not, it's like, okay, it transitions them into their hitting or their next group or whatever they're doing next in that day. I think that was a huge win for me this year, personally with the guys, is like having a plan. They know the plan. It's the same every week, roughly, right? Double headers and everything kind of come into play, but they knew when they truly needed something, they could come and talk to me about it. But if they came in the weight room and they didn't talk to me about it, and they're, kind of half doing their job, they're going to hear it. And they understood that, and they knew that, and that communication kind of went back and forth. And that's how we helped each other, them and I, get through a 142 game season. It does get a lot, and you need to find a way. Each person individually needs to find a way to somehow relate and understand their players, so it can help them in the end, get them to do stuff on days they don't need to, and vice versa, allows us to have an open mind and communicate, like, okay, if you don't do this today, or you want to do it tomorrow, we'll be good to do it tomorrow. You got 6 days to train, you can do something every day, no problem. And it doesn't need to be a lift doesn't need to be an hour. A lift doesn't need to be 45 minutes. It doesn't need to be 30 minutes. It can be whatever you need to get work in, and you can spread it out and do a whole bunch of stuff. So.
Yeah, and I think as you personally move up the ladder, you'll see that will come in handy for you. It's just those relationships. And then the thing that you talked about with your last block of, like, quote unquote baseball specific movements, like, I think for me, that's the easiest way to get buy-in, is just by getting results with your program. Like, if your program gets guys results and they feel different in their actual performance, like, they're gonna buy into it, right? Like, if you crush a guy and you're doing squats on squats on squats, and he goes out and he's slower on the field because he's sore, he's tired, whatever that may be, he's not gonna come back to you. But if you're doing some speed squats with a guy, and then that day he hits a home run and he's like, dude, I felt so explosive out there, he's bought into you. Like, he's in. And it works whether it's weight room movements, trap bar, squat, the big rocks, or those finer detail, I call them like connection drills. Like, as you said, you do it in the weight room, and then you go immediately to the cage, or you go immediately out to throw, and then they're just primed to do the baseball activity, whatever that may be, whether it's with an aqua bag or cable stuff or the strap. Like, I think that's how you get buy-in with guys as you move up the system. And I think, going back to, like, relating this back to college, I think there's a lot of coaches in the college setting, the private setting, the high school setting, that don't have the pro ball experience, and they're trying to tell people how to train players a certain way. But there's a difference between being developed as a baseball player and a Major League Baseball player. Like, Major League Baseball players have to be really adaptable. They have to be able to recover. They have to play every day, where, like, high school kids, college kids play a couple times a week. Their schedule is very controlled. Like I did a little bit of college when I was a GA, and you can like talk on this a little more. It's like even the 5-day routine in pro ball is different than the college setting, like Friday night starter guy. Like it's just longer time in between. So there's more time to train, there's more time to develop, and they're just playing less. So I think that is really important. And it's going to be really important for you is finding those ways to relate with those players, finding what they need that day, and then finding a way to connect what they do in the weight room to the field and their performance on the field. And I think it's a win for you.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, Chris. And it's funny you mentioned the connection to the guy who hits a home run in the game. I had one of my guys this year. He did his first 2 blocks, and then he would always come in on a second day and he'd maybe do some arms and maybe a little light med ball stuff. And about 3 or 4 of those days in a row, he hit a home run, and we just look at each other, flex the arm, and just laugh about it. And it's fun to see that work. And it's baseball's routine. It's all about routine. And once you find what works, it's like, all right, great. And then whenever that becomes stale, you make those minor adjustments, and you adjust what you need to, or you make minor adjustments. But having that base routine is huge.
And it's super funny that you say that, because a lot of the things in the game obviously are out of our control, right? But maybe we can get them in a right state of mind or a physical state to potentially perform better. And if you do something with a guy and he performs, he's going to want to do it every day, right? Like, hey, we did banded quad T-spine today, and you threw a guy out from center field, and he's like, I got to do that every day now. And then before you know it, it becomes part of their normal routine. And you don't even have to tell them. They just do it. They come in and you're like, oh, what are you doing today? Oh, remember that, the strap drill you showed me? Like, I really like that. It helps me feel like I'm hitting better. And then they'll do it, and say it's a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever. And then they'll get in a rut. The game is ebbs and flows, right? So they'll get in that little rut, and they're like, bro, I need to mix up my routine. Like, what do you got for me? And then like, you hit something and you pray that this is the right button. Right? You push the right button today, and then it's like, they go for 4 and they're like, dude, that wasn't it. Like, we got to find something else. And then like you do something else and it works, and like they just keep coming back to you. But again, I think the biggest thing that gets overlooked with, buy-in is results, right? Like, everybody talks about process. And I'm a big like process guy. But if your process doesn't lead to results, you're just doing things for the sake of doing them. Like, at the end of the day, especially in the pro setting and especially at the major league setting, results trumps everything. Mm-hmm. So if you can find a way to get them results with some sort of good process, they're going to buy into it because it's getting them results, right? So like, if we can find ways to connect those, I think it's really good. And then the other thing that you said when you were talking, it was the first thing you said, is when you were young, you wanted to come in and make an impact immediately, and you wanted to set the world on fire. And I see a lot of young strength coaches come into baseball and they want to change the world, but they don't know how the world even works, right? And it happens time and time again. So let's talk on that, about just, being a young strength coach and just kind of being a fly on the wall. But at the same time, like, I tell a lot of the young guys that we bring in and we interview and hire them, like, we brought you in because we believe you can bring something to this program. Like, don't be afraid to speak up, but also understand that like, our program is kind of set, and like, we're not just going to change just because you saw something and you haven't even experienced a full season. So let's talk on that a little bit. Like, I know you're at first, maybe the difference between being a college coach first time around and pro ball first time around, and then seeing them again, like the second time around as you went through, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So the college setting for me, as much as I came into it feeling very confident from being an intern with Mike Boyle's group, like that probably helped me the most. Of just, it was there, I watched, I listened, I learned, and as a matter of fact, took the same principles and because I hadn't ever really written a full year program yet, use that as my base template and built off of that. So that was very unique, I think, because I think a lot of people can come in and be like, this is how I'm doing it. This is so on and so forth. And this is what it is. And they don't tend to adjust. And especially right off the bat, but having that base allowed me to have my confidence in writing programs. And then actually, I think gave me a false sense of confidence in writing programs, because you have your base template, but it's not a one size fits all for everybody, especially as you get further into looking at your sports and just working in the setting, right? So that false sense of confidence leads to some mistakes and some issues, and then you learn from them. And I think everyone needs to have that to learn, to grow. And then, so that's the first time around for me in college. And then the first time around in pro ball, it was that same mindset of come in, whether I was or wasn't, tried to be a little quiet, but still have some personality, right? Because nobody wants to be a fly on the wall. Everyone when I've worked with interns, this interesting little side note here, but when I work with interns and they just want to sit there and watch and observe, I said, no, go coach. At the end of the day, go talk to someone, go help. You know what you're doing. Go out there. And that's how I learned. And that's how I kind of tried to impose myself, is like, I'm not just going to sit and observe. I'd like to be involved coaching, because that's what I believe I'm good at, So it's like you jump out there, and then from that program, first year in pro ball, right? Like you can either just follow it as is, or you can try and tinker some stuff, or you can follow it with the intention of swapping out exercises and keeping it fresh and keeping it good with your athletes. I think that was the best way to do it. However, at the same time, I was the young coach and I made some mistakes and may or may not have swapped out some stuff. And it's like, you get looked at kind of funny every once in a while. And it's like, all right, that's fair. Like, take a step back. And then going back into college, been in two different settings, been in two different work places. I came back in and had some age under me, wasn't working with the same players that I played with, which was a big help. Because that almost hurt me as a first-time coach. Come in, and now I've been through the ringer a little bit. I've made some mistakes, as everyone does, and I believe should, right? You have to learn. Made those mistakes and then learned from them moving forward, and had my programs, had my plan A, B, C, and D in case something went wrong. Started retesting my athletes and started really directing my programming, which helped me a lot in college. And then going back into pro ball, and we'll get back on the burst onto the scene thing here, is came in first time with the Rangers and felt, again, that false sense of confidence, and was a little louder to start. I had some years under my belt. Like I feel confident in saying opinions and whatnot. And it's like, hold on. You know what I mean? It's like, you really take a step back and you reflect. And it's like the term I come back to the most is quick to listen and slow to speak, and understand that everyone around us knows so much about a lot of things, about everything, and may have certain items that they are so passionate about that they've trialed that they have more answers than say I did or had. And you begin to listen and take in and be a sponge on the wall, yet still have presence. It's a very fine line, but that is what all those years of coaching and going from college to pro ball back and forth have taught me. It's like, slow down, open your ears up, and just listen to what's around you. Because as soon as you start, I forgot who said this quote. It's like, how much you don't know about the world when you start listening to it. But when you don't, it's like, I know everything. This is how it's going to be, and gets people in trouble. And it's obviously it's gotten me, and I've made my mistakes. Everyone's going to continue to make mistakes, right? It's like, that's how you grow. It's how you evolve. And but referring back to it again, is like, quick to listen, slow to speak has been the biggest rock that's really helped me progress from college pro, and what I've learned and taken away probably the most.
Yeah, the funny thing is, like, I can remember my first year in Pro Bowl. I went to the Pirates, and I reported to Pirate City in the middle of spring training. It was like March 15th, 16th, 17th, one of those days. There were so many people there, and I was trying to meet everybody and trying to just soak it all in, and I was so overwhelmed. And the guy that I really like respected the most, one of my true mentors, Joe Hughes, he had been around a while. He was basically our coordinator. And once everybody, like, I got to know all the AA, AAA guys, they were gone, right? And then it was time for extended, and I got some good time with Joe. And he would put us in situations where he already knew what the outcome was going to be. He already knew, like, what we were going to forget or what we were not going to do. And, you know, he would ask you, like, hey, how do you think you did? And you're like, oh, I killed it. I did this and that. And he's like, well, what about this? Did you think about this? And like, no, I didn't. And like, I can specifically remember there was one point where we split the groups into two for conditioning, but there was only one coach available or something. So the coach went with the one, and he told the coach, like, hey, give the other group a stopwatch. And it was like kind of in passing, you know, whatever. And he forgot. And the guy was like, hey, how did it go? And he's like, oh yeah, everybody did their thing. Times were good, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, did you give the other group a stopwatch? And he was like, no. And he's like, that was like, but he knew, like, he was going to forget or whatever it is. And it was like, because he's been around so long, he has seen so many things that he just has a different perspective on things. And that's the point, I think, of this whole talk is, like, when you're a first year coach and you come in, the people that you're working under have been doing this longer, so they have a better view. And so for me, like, specifically, this is my first year in the big leagues, right? And I think that I have a good grasp of how things work, but at the same time, I'm with Kiyoshi, and Kiyoshi's been around a long time. I always joke with him, like, dude, you've been in the big leagues for like 100 years. You know everything, right? And you know everyone. And so for me, it was like, hey, just blend in, don't make a fool of yourself, and ask Kiyoshi questions and follow his lead, because if he's doing something, like, it's for a reason. And I had really good success, but like you said, it's a very fine line to try to toe of, like, being outwardly present in your coaching, but not making a fool of yourself, and like understanding that this is your first time in this given spot and other people around you have already done this, right? So it's a very fine line, and it's really hard. And I don't know which way to tell people. I don't know if it's just like, hey, just go all in, and when you make mistakes, like, ask for forgiveness, not permission, or like sit back and don't say anything. And then people are like, what's that weird guy doing in the corner? Like, you know what I mean? You have to kind of find that in between spot. And I think it's a little different for everybody, right? Like, I think your presence in the room as a coach, as a person, like your appearance, like all that kind of plays into it. And I think you have to just find what works for you, right? Like, there are times where I won't say anything. And then there are times where I'll go on a super long rant like I am right now. And like, you kind of got to, you know what I mean? You have to find and pick your moments and find what works for you. So interesting point there. And then the other thing that you said that I want to keep going on with this is you said you first were with Boyle, and then basically you took Boyle's principles with you, and it got you in trouble because you thought that was the way. And I was the same way. Like, I interned at TCU. So everything that my internship coordinator there said was like gospel to me. And anything that you said that was against it, I didn't believe it, right? And like, I think sometimes we get stuck in what our mentors say. And then as we see things breaking down because they don't fit our specific situation, then we start learning. And then it's like, okay, I respect what that guy says, but he doesn't have to be right all the time. And I can disagree with him and we can still get along.
Absolutely. It's there's no one size fits all. I mean, like I said at the very beginning, if there was one program that worked for everybody, period, we wouldn't have jobs. You know what I mean? It's like everyone has so many unique ways and trials and experiences that you take a little bit of everything and you create your own. I mean, I'm doing the what is it? The need for speed Altus course right now, and part of it is, okay, this is what we have compiled for you, and it's like, all right, now what's your opinion, and how do you create with all the information that's here and all the information that you've already had, compile it into something. The same thing with programming. It's like you take like you said, the gospel, And then you find out, oh, wait, that works in his setting, which is great, or that setting, which is great. But now I'm in finals week and I was supposed to be maxing out or something like that. And it's like, it's just not going to happen. You know what I mean? You just find out as you go. And it's always adapting. I mean, each program I've written has been different. And one of my mentors said, always keep your first program or your previous program. I look back at my first program I ever wrote and I'm like, what was I doing? It's like it's constant evolution. So it's fun to be a part of.
Yeah. And I think even like the program that worked for us in the big leagues this past season, it might not work this coming season. I hope that it does, but we're already like auditing the program and like, hey, we can do this instead of that next year. Like, this is how we're going to make this program even better. Like, we're going to do this specifically. And the other thing is like, you get to know the players a little bit more. And I would imagine this is probably magnified in the college setting, right? It's like when you first come in, maybe you kind of keep it general because you don't know some of those players, but the more you build the relationship with them, the more their program kind of changes, right? Like there are guys that I know now that I wrote their programs this year that I already have ideas for them next year because I have a year under my belt with them and I know what they're comfortable doing, not doing. And like, it's just going to make the flow that much easier where I'm just like, hey, here's your program. And they're like, yes, I love doing this.
Yep.
I hate doing this, but I know I really need to do it. Like, let's do it. I think as you get to know players, even their program, like individually changes as well as your overall concept of program design.
Absolutely. I actually, big advantage for us this year is getting those end of year meetings with our guys is like, hey, one of my questions, talk to me about the program, likes, dislikes, needs, wants. How can I get, all of this is about their development and what we're looking for going forward. But at the end, hey, come back at me, give me something, constructive criticism and being able to accept that is a hard thing to do, but it's the only way you get better, like take it and learn from it.
The house I was raised in was built on constructive criticism. And like my dad was very hard on me and it was very black and white. Like either you did this or you didn't and like fix it. And so for me, I've always kind of grown up like that. And I don't care if I tell Kiyoshi all the time, like if there's something I'm doing wrong, like just tell me, like you're not going to upset me. Like I need to know I'm doing something wrong. Right. And I think it's hard in today's world where some people are just either they're afraid or it just hurts their ego to like be told that things aren't working. And like, I think if you're open to just hearing other people's opinions and especially the players, right? Because, we know the X's and O's, we have the degrees, we have everything, but at the same time, they're the ones going on the field and playing. And if something we do with them in the textbook says it's great, but we do it with them and they go out and they don't feel great, like it's not good for them. And so being able to hear and get that feedback from them. And again, I think it's going to help you moving up is that you're not afraid to hear that from players, and players are not afraid to tell you. That's the thing is when you go up the system and guys have been around a while, like if they don't like something, they're going to express it. And you can either have your feelings hurt and pout in the corner, or you can talk with the guy and be like, all right, hey, what do we got to do to fix this? Let's talk. And I think those type of interactions really go a long way with players where it's like, okay, this guy's actually listening to what I have to say. And again, it's not always like, we don't always want to take out the hard stuff just because it's hard to do, right? Like the player doesn't want to do something because it's difficult. And you're like, oh yeah, you never have to do anything difficult. Like we still have to strain at times, but at the same time, we have to have an explanation for why we're going to strain, right? It's not like, hey, we're running gassers today just because I hate you. It's like, we're running gassers because I want you to be able to tolerate being at a higher heart rate when you pitch or like whatever the case may be, right? Like have an explanation for why you're doing, and then they're still probably going to complain, but at least they'll do it, right?
Yes, exactly.
So they're going to complain, but they'll still do it. So, yeah, dude, this is really awesome. And is there anything else that we missed before we kind of transition into other questions just on the college versus pro setting, even program design or working with players? Anything that we missed, or we can keep flowing? It's up to you.
No, I think we touched a lot of good things. It's just like at the end of the day, it's a little bit of everything. absorb it, be a sponge on the wall. And it's like, quick to listen and slow to speak. But that's the name of the game. Be adaptable. That's it's all about
for
it.
sure, dude. Yeah, and I think too, the other thing that you've kind of pounded on is like just knowing your specific setting, right? Like what works in my setting, even for me, might not work for you. So like I could give you our program and you can say, great, but it's not going to work because of this, right? And like you said, is the perfect program doesn't exist. Like if it did, like you said, we wouldn't have jobs. Like it'd just be like, all right, here's one program. It's on, xyz.com. Just follow this and you're a stud baseball player. Like it doesn't work that way.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, everybody, that's going to conclude part 1 of our 2-part episode with Jon. I hope you enjoyed this one. I think it was a really good talk about just training in the college setting versus in the pro setting and how to effectively be a young strength coach in the field. 3 things that I took from Jon in this episode: use relationship building to help prevent monotony in training. Don't be so stuck in a pattern of doing things that you lose the ability to adjust, and reflect on the mistakes you've made to help you learn from them. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.